IT's up and running, so we're ready when you are.
Thank you for your patience. It's 9:06, and this meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board is now in session. Ms. Rowe, is there any public comments?
No one signed up to speak.
Item 3, adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA meeting of November 10th, 2010. Hold on, got the wrong minutes here, I'm sorry. Adoption of the minutes for the CRRMA meeting of December 8th, 2010. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute an interlocal agreement with the city of El Paso regarding the use of off-duty police officers for traffic control on CRRMA projects, including the Loop 375 at I-10, America's Interchange project. Mr. Tejas.
Raymond Tejas, Executive Director, for the record. This item before you is, as you'll note in the backup and in the resolution, I note that as the CRRMA continues to develop major construction projects, we will need from time to time off-duty police officers in uniform to provide traffic control services. So what you see before you is essentially an agreement between the City of El Paso and the Camino Real RMA related to the provision of those services. This agreement is virtually identical to the agreement that the City of El Paso has with TxDOT. I would mention a couple other items as well. These services, whenever the RMA needs to close down any lanes, all of those lane closures, all of the traffic control services, those are actually provided by our developer, and in fact were built into the project costs. So these costs are really passed through, and when you look at it, the police department is really passing through all of the salary benefits and all the costs of the employees, all of the costs of the vehicle usage, which is $12 an hour currently, and all of the costs related to the provision of these services. They're passing them on to the RMA. The RMA then receives that invoice and then passes it on to the developer, who, again, has provided those costs within the development cost of the entire project. So it's really essentially a kind of a pass-through process. Beyond that, I would note one other thing. We received this draft yesterday morning and worked with the city to make certain revisions and agreed to the final form. That's when I passed this. That's when I provided a copy to you all yesterday afternoon. After that, the city came back with additional requested revisions, which you will see in your packet, which is a one sheet behind the tab number 4, and it's marked as number 4 up in the right-hand corner. And what you'll see is the changes are limited to Section 2 under Services, and really it's a couple two main changes. Through the collective bargaining agreement between the City of El Paso and the police department union, they have a requirement that if off-duty police officers are brought back into service, they have to charge for a minimum of 3 hours. So what they've done here is made sure that we would be charged for those 3 hours. And again, this is a pass-through, so if the city is charged anything for the services that we've asked for, they're passing them on to us. So we added that in there. And in fact, I was told as well that I was assured that TxDOT already pays this as well. So we're not in any worse position than TxDOT is. However, they did make a concession. Originally, they were requesting that if the RMA had to cancel the request for services within 24 hours of the required services, that we pay for those 3 hours in advance. We contested that, and they suggested a compromise that it be dropped to 2 hours. So we can cancel up to 2 hours prior to the services without any charge. Within that 2 hour window, then we would pay for the 3 hour minimum. But beyond that, we also received a concession in that they would only use officers, detectives, or sergeants for these services. They would not use lieutenants, and that amounts to a reduction in cost to us. So with those revisions, I would, and subject to your questions, of course, I would ask that this item be approved.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 4 is approved. Item 5, presentation, discussion, and action on a revised approach to complete the following projects as identified within the 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Number 3, Loop 375 Northeast Mainline Extension. Number 5, Loop 375 at FM 659, the Zaragoza Direct Connectors. And number 12, the Cesar Chavez Rehab and Managed Lanes Project. Mr. Diaz.
Okay, what you see before you actually with items 5, 6, and 7, they're all linked. Item 5 is really intended to give you all a general overview of some changes that have occurred with regard to the way that the 2008 Comprehensive Mobility Plan is being pursued. And so number 5 will give you that overview. Number 6 will ask for certain actions of the board related to the Northeast project. And number 7 will ask for certain actions related to the Zaragoza project. So in your backup, you have the original item number 5, which was the original memo that I sent out to you on January 5th of 2011. And that memo really outlines the understanding that I had at the time of how what the new approach was to develop the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. What you see behind that tab is a red line version. It's in color. It's a red line version of that exact same memo, and the red lines identify certain additional revisions that have been made to the approach to complete the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. So if you'll go straight to the red line, and we can focus on the changes. And let me speak a little more generally before we do that, and for the benefit of the public, really. In general, what's happening is that originally, if you recall, the Camino Real RMA was really looking to be in charge of the design, the development, the implementation, the construction oversight of 4 projects in the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. 3 were non-tolled and 1 was tolled. And those are the projects that were read into the record. You've got the Northeast Main Lanes, you've got the Zaragoza Direct Connectors, the Cesar Chavez Rehab and Managed Lane Project, which is the toll project, and of course the Americas Interchange. Well, the Americas project is well underway. We have a developer on board, so that's already done. That process is going to follow as we originally planned. However, TxDOT came back and talked to the RMA about a different approach for the remaining 3 projects, again, Northeast Main Lane, Zaragoza, and Chavez. And the idea was that TxDOT would provide the design services, they would provide the procurement services, and they would also provide the construction oversight services. So really what that does in terms of the RMA is that the RMA essentially becomes the financing arm for the projects. And this is not unique. This is very similar to what the RMA did for the Interloop project, and so you'll all recall that. The intent behind this is to expedite the project, and the idea is that TxDOT is bringing in additional resources throughout the various districts of the state. I believe they brought in 4 or 5 different districts to assist with this work. They also have brought in outside consultants to shore up their resources. So they've brought a lot of resources in to help expedite this process. In fact, in terms of expediting, they are looking now at letting all 3 of these projects in April. And letting in this usage means, because they are doing the design in-house, letting in this usage refers to the fact that they would actually put the project out and select developers for each of these 3 projects in April of 2011. So it's a really very fast turnaround time, very, very aggressive schedule. Secondarily, there's another value that this approach brings to the completion of these projects, and that is in terms of resources. When TxDOT agreed to complete the design, the procurement, and the construction oversight, they agreed to do that at their cost. So what that means in terms of these projects, when you look at Zaragoza, for example, that's $32 million is allocated for that project. That $32 million will remain whole, and no costs related to the design work will come out of that $32 million. So that's a huge savings for the project. And that really, when you think about it, design is often kind of within the range of 5 to 8% of the project cost. So that's a real savings there. Similarly, the construction oversight, that's an additional anywhere between 7 and 10% as well. So you see some real savings by TxDOT bringing its resources in and covering that.
As well as the procurement.
As well as the procurement. Now the procurement, because they are doing the design, the procurement cost drops significantly, but there is still value in that. So that's a real a benefit to TxDOT coming in and providing those services. Now I should mention, one of the first things you'll notice in the redlined memo is that beyond the design, the procurement, and the construction oversight, TxDOT has also agreed to provide the right-of-way acquisition costs and the utility services adjustments. those obviously can be huge. What they're actually saying is that they will pay for any right-of-way that is needed to be acquired for the completion of these projects. And again, those costs will not come out of the $32 million for Zaragoza or the $80 million that is allocated for the Northeast Main Lanes project. So again, real significant cost savings to the projects. So then the question becomes, if they've provided all these additional resources, is there going to be a surplus at the back end? And if so, what happens to that surplus? Well, initial discussions, and all of this will be hashed out through this process that we're beginning today through the submission of the State Infrastructure Bank applications and the pass-through applications. But what the result will be is that it'll be memorialized within the final agreements, whether it's pass-through agreements, SIB loan agreements, or otherwise. But what's being discussed now is that, say, for example, there's a $5 million surplus on the Northeast Main Lanes project. What TxDOT and the City of El Paso are currently thinking is that that surplus would be basically split. Half of the surplus would go towards paying down the debt that was incurred by the Transportation Reinvestment Zone that the City of El Paso has created for these projects. And the remaining half, $2.5 million, would then go back to the MPO for distribution or allocation for other regionally significant projects. So again, another very positive aspect of this new approach to developing these projects.
And that $5 million number is just an example. We don't
Right.
really have any idea what that number is. Obviously, we're hoping for a large number, and but until these projects are let and bid on, then at that point we'll know what, if, and how much, if any, savings there are.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. And kind of to that point as well, with the RMA's new role in these projects, not only do we become the financing arm, but we also become the oversight as well, because we are the ones that are providing the pass-through dollars through the pass-through agreement with TxDOT. We are also the ones providing the Transportation Reinvestment Zone dollars through the SIB bank. So because we've shifted into that role, well, we also have to provide design oversight for TxDOT to make sure that they're designing it without excesses. It's not the gold-plated version. It's what we need, and there are really, the point is we need to make sure that there is a surplus and that there's the most surplus that we can get at the back end. So the RMA then shifts into the financial role as well as the design oversight and the construction oversight to make sure, by way of example, during the construction, that there aren't a great number of amendments during the construction that are financially out of the norm. So that our role again then becomes financial and design and construction oversight.
And TRZ money is only being applied to the Northeast Main Lines and Zaragoza direct connectors. There is no TRZ money being used for the Cesar Chavez rehab and managed lanes projects. So
that's right, and our role, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that's an important distinction. So really what I was kind of describing here at the outset is related to Zaragoza and the main lane and the Northeast Main Lanes. In terms of the Cesar Chavez project, that's a little bit different. Those funds are available, so we won't be providing any financial services for that. Actually, on that one, the current plan is that TxDOT would do the design, construction oversight, and all the services related to the development of that project. And in the end, then the RMA would step in and basically own and manage and operate the managed lanes portion, just the toll portion. So it would be the inside lanes only. As a reminder, and for the general public, the Cesar Chavez project is looking to rehab the 4 existing non-toll lanes. Those would be free, continue to be free, and those would be turned over and managed by TxDOT after the completion of the project. But the 2 inside new lanes would be managed lanes or toll lanes, and the RMA would manage those at that point. So in terms of what the RMA's role is on the Chavez project, it would be one of really design and construction oversight to a greater degree, because we would be the ultimate owners of those managed lanes.
if we exercise what's called primacy, and we're going to talk today about exercising conditional primacy with the ability to then exercise primacy at some later date, once we've had an opportunity to take a look at the financial review of the managed lanes and to make sure that this is a project that is good for the RMA.
That's right. So what you see in your memo in relation to primacy, you see a bit of that discussion in the Cesar Chavez section. And in fact, when you will actually start to see requests for action at next month's board meeting related to primacy and related also to the market valuation terms and conditions. But in terms of action items for Chavez, there are none today. And I think, and if,
Mr. Tice, can we just quickly review the red line items to this for the board?
Absolutely.
And then just see if there's any questions from this particular memo?
yes, sir. So if you'll flip to page 2 of the red line version, you'll see the first 3 items, the red lines relate to the fact that TxDOT has now agreed to provide the expenses related to the right-of-way acquisitions and the utility adjustments. So those are the first 3. There was a typo in the top of the second paragraph related to the TxDOT, and then I changed the date of today's meeting to the 20th. Page 3, then we're talking about Northeast Main Lanes and Zaragoza. The first change you see, again, is the right-of-way acquisitions and utility adjustments, noting that TxDOT will cover those. This is an important one as well. Initially, when TxDOT was looking about how to develop these projects and how to get them out to make sure that we made the April letting, they initially thought that the Northeast Main Lanes project would have to be cut in scope to make those deadlines. They have since said that they can actually complete the entire project. As a reminder, and again for the benefit of the public, Northeast Main Lanes project is the completion of Loop 375 in the Northeast from Dyer all the way up to, and in fact, under current US 54. So it includes an underpass at US 54. Initially, TxDOT thought they would have to remove that underpass in order to make those deadlines. They now believe that they can handle the entire project. So that's a good thing.
One other distinction as well is with some of the work on regards to right-of-way utility service adjustments, the El Paso District, TxDOT, other districts, as well as any sort of consultants that are required to do that work, that will not be charged to the available project funds.
That's right, and that goes for everything that TxDOT is providing, whether it's done internally by TxDOT resources here in El Paso, outside districts, or even consultants. TxDOT's absorbing all of those costs. The next 2 are really just to point out that under proposed next steps for both Main Lanes and Zaragoza, I've added likely thereby, which really just kind of highlights the fact that TxDOT and the RMA currently are looking to enter into pass-through toll agreements for each of these projects, and we're hopeful that we can use those agreements for all of the agreements that we need to enter into, as opposed to having a pass-through toll agreement and then having a project development agreement and any other related agreements. We're hopeful that we can just get it done in one pass-through toll agreement, but I've added that language just to highlight to the board that we may require an additional agreement. We're hoping not, though. So page 4, then, the revisions there relates to what would happen in the event that there are surpluses, and that's as we discussed. The current intent between the city and TxDOT is that those any surplus funds would be split between the pay down of the debt created by the TRZ, and then the rest would go to the MPO for reallocation to the region's important projects.
In regards to the Cesar Chavez project, if there are surplus funds out of the 80.25, I believe is a number, how is that going to be? Is that...
Well, now that one's a little bit different because there is no debt being created for that project. So any surplus related to that project would then come back to the region for use in the toll projects. That's the current intent.
Which is the phase 2 and phase 3 that we've been looking at going forward of the Southern Relief Route.
That's right. So on page 5, then, you'll see the first revision relates to, again, the right-of-way acquisitions utility adjustments. And the last item there, the last item relates to the revision on the next page as well. Originally, TxDOT thought that we would, to step back, as you know, we have a financial assistance agreement between the RMA and TxDOT. That granted us the original $80.25 million to develop this project. What we're going to have to do then next month is go back and revise that financial assistance agreement to reflect the revised approach for this project. What TxDOT originally thought was that we would have to revise that original agreement, and then enter into a second financial assistance agreement related to all the additional services that TxDOT will be providing. They've since said that actually we would just revise that original FAA, the financial assistance agreement, and not require a second one. So that's a good thing for us, and you'll see that reflected in the 2 revisions, bottom of page 5 and top of page 6. So those are all of the revisions that we've been made aware of to date.
A lot of changes. So if you have some questions, this is a great opportunity to kind of present those. We can cover those.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Go ahead, Eduardo.
Mr. Calvo?
Good morning. Eduardo Calo with TxDOT here in El Paso. First of all, our district engineer, Chuck Berry, asked me to come here and speak to you, and first of all, apologize for him not being able to be here today. What Mr. Day has prepared in this memo, I think, is a fabulous summary of all the major events that happened since we met in early December when the decision was made to modify the way that these projects were going to be delivered. So again, I'm very grateful for Mr. Tejas, because we've been using this memo also to help to make sure that all of the changes are captured. Also, to express the gratitude that, with all these changes, the fact that we continue coordinating and working together and delivering these projects, we're really grateful for that. As Mr. Tejas said, some of the major benefits of this change is that, number one, we're delivering these projects sooner. It's putting a major burden on some of the TxDOT resources in terms of getting the design and ready, and all the agreements and everything else that needs to be in place so that we can let the projects in April. The first time they told us that that the idea was to let the projects in April, we asked, well, what year? And they said, this year. So, but it is indeed a very good thing for the region that we're delivering these projects sooner. The second thing, in terms of the potential savings or some of the expenses that TxDOT will incur that will not be charged to the project, that's also huge. There will be some substantial dollars that will now be available for other projects as well for the region. Last night, in some conversations that I had with Mr. Berry, in terms of how the savings or the money that would not be used for the projects, how that would be either split or something, I think the thinking now is that that would be going towards the TRZ instead of having the Category 2 available for other projects, that the savings would be used more towards either reducing the amount that the TRZ is going to be used for the projects, or paid back sooner instead of splitting it 50-50. So that's something that, like Mr. Tejas said, will be hashed out formally as we move on with the agreement. So, but either way, it's very good news, because now more money is going to be available for projects locally.
Mr. Colvoy, there's a general sense that getting these projects out to bid sooner than later will result in some fairly competitive bids and potentially some good cost savings. Is that correct? Yes,
that's always true. Right now, we continue seeing very good prices in some of the construction projects that we're letting. So we definitely want to take advantage of that.
So this is moving up some fairly significant projects up on the timeline very, very quickly, and getting them out on the street, and potentially, if these are let in April, when would there be work started on these? Would this be midsummer when we start seeing activity?
Probably sooner. It all depends. For example, on the Joe Battle at Zaragoza, one of the big challenges that we have specifically to that project is the right-of-way and utilities. So a lot of the right-of-way and utility activity would probably be happening after the contract is awarded. So the actual construction would probably be delayed a couple of months, or 4 or 5 months, whatever is necessary. But once, for example, the Northeast, I don't think there's anything major that in terms of preparation. So we would be seeing the orange barrels, very, very soon after the contract is awarded.
So we're talking almost $200 million worth of projects going out on the streets in April. That's a lot of activity.
A couple of questions. Eduardo or Ray, what happened? What changed? Why is it that TxDOT suddenly decided? I mean, what was the decision-making process? Just to understand how you got to this point.
I don't think there was one single factor in this. As we said, as the chair just mentioned, we really wanted to take advantage of getting it out quickly, to take advantage of the conditions in the market right now, get lower prices, just get the projects ready and out to construction, and consequently out to the public for use sooner. So I don't think that there was one single reason, but again, the way that that this new approach was agreed upon, there's a lot of other benefits, especially on the funding side.
And then the other question's a little bit, if Raymond is saying that these processes may cost between, what is it, 7 and 10%, and then 6 or 7 to 10%, in other words, those would be the savings. Why not borrow less? Can we anticipate a little bit of the savings and then borrow less up front instead of 80 million, say 75 or 74 or something like that, and then sort of take care of the debt by borrowing less rather than paying it more quickly? Would that be better?
Yes, absolutely, it would be. So we obviously will, and have included our financial advisor in these early discussions, as well as bond counsel, to make sure that we're doing this in the appropriate manner. The problem that we've got today is that we need, from a timing perspective, we have to submit pass-through applications and more importantly, state infrastructure bank loan applications. So we fixed the figures on what the original numbers were. So if in fact, when we go through the actual process of entering into these agreements, we actually get the hard construction costs, then we can start backing out some of that debt. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that the MPO may say, well, we're going to lose if you borrow less, because the whatever is left will get half of it, and they would obviously get less. But, I think for us, it would be a good deal to borrow less, I guess.
Well, look, sounds like with this new approach, anything that's left would be all go to pay down the TRZs. So I kind of agree that it makes sense to just borrow less if that's a feasible option, if we know how much work will be required.
Yeah.
Well, and as you're hearing, this is a moving target day by day.
Yeah.
So what Mr. Calvo just shared about all of it going to pay down the TRZ debt, that's new. That's news to me.
Okay.
So it's a moving target, but you're absolutely right. I mean, once these agreements start to form up, then we'll actually know what we really need, and we'll only take out what we need.
Okay. And the last question I have is the oversight. This would be through our consultants, I guess. Our RMA consultants, they would just take care of overseeing that the project is done according to our wishes and desires, the board, that is, right?
That's correct. Well, and really remember, too, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the city of El Paso, as they were the ones providing the TRZ funds.
Okay.
I have a
Thank you, Mr.
question.
Chairman.
Mr. Caldwell, I know there's tremendous resources now being shifted to these projects, I guess throughout TxDOT. Are you also contemplating those, or is TxDOT contemplating changing their methodology with other communities in the state, or just El Paso at this point?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know if this same approach is being used in other communities. What I can tell you is that the projects, the way that the comprehensive mobility plan projects were conceived and have been developed, and changing over time and all that is very unique. I mean, we're continuously blazing trails and trying all new things. There's nothing typical about the way that these projects have been conceived and the way that we're either funding them and combining all different, like in the I-10 Americas, we had so many different funding sources. It was design build, it was done with the RMA and all that. So there's nothing typical about the way that these projects are being delivered. And that's a very good thing, because that has really allowed this region to move forward with many of these projects sooner.
Well, I like using resources from other districts, because that's basically what we're doing, right? This is being farmed out to other districts to assist
Right.
our district here.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Houston district is pretty much taking over the design for the Loop 375 Northeast. They're doing the big chunk of the work, and San Antonio is also helping us with the Joe Battle at Zaragoza, as well as divisions, the Bridge Division, and several others. But yeah, TxDOT as a whole is moving the resources statewide to help us deliver these projects on time in April.
When the CMP was originally put together, we're all partners in the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. TxDOT, the City of El Paso, the RMA, the El Paso MPO, and I've looked at this kind of change every different way. All the partners coming together, looking at how we can get this done. And at the end of the day, we're looking at getting these projects on the street much, much faster than anticipated at potentially a much lower cost. This is a great deal all around, and I'm personally grateful to TxDOT for helping us to get these things done and hopefully seeing some significant savings. So,
Again, like we've said all along since the CMP was conceived, this is truly a partnership with the City of El Paso providing the TRZ, the RMA, TxDOT, the MPO. We're very happy that this plan was conceived this way, and we're moving forward.
any other questions for Mr. Calvo? Thank you, Mr. Calvo. Mr. Tejas, what action is required on item 5?
No action.
Okay. Item 6, excuse me. Discussion and action on CRRMA board resolutions authorizing the execution and submission of the following applications for Loop 375 Northeast Mainline Extension Project. Mr. Tejas?
As you'll see, so with item 5 as the background, what you see in items number 6 and 7 are really the implementation of this new approach. So what you'll see as item 6A is a pass-through financing application to TxDOT in the amount of $5.7 million. And you'll see as part of your backup the actual application itself. Now, I've excluded all of the exhibits, but obviously have those available to you should you be interested. I guess in summary, really, and as it relates to this project, the Northeast Main Lane project, the way that we are looking to finance it, and then of course we will, as requested by Dr. Payan, we will revisit the actual amounts that we will be borrowing once the final numbers begin to come in. But what we're looking at through the submission of this application is that it's an $80 million project. $20 million of it will come from a state infrastructure bank loan, which will be repaid through the Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 3 of the City of El Paso. Very similar, in fact, to the way that the portion of Americas interchange was financed. And 54.3 of it will come directly from Category 2 fund of TxDOT, while the remaining 5.7 will come through the pass-through toll application, which is actually item 6A. And 6B, then, of course, is the $20 million loan application to the State Infrastructure Bank. Subject to your questions, I'm not sure how much detail you'd like for me to go into. Kind of lay it at your step and tell me what you want to know.
I'm comfortable. Subject to questions by the board. If there are no questions, is there a motion authorizing the execution and submission of the following application for Loop 375 Northeast Main Line Extension Project? A pass-through financing application to the Texas Department of Transportation in the amount of $5.7 million and a state infrastructure bank loan application to the Texas Department of Transportation in the amount of $20 million.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Items approved. Item 7, be substantially similar for the other project. Discussion and action on CRRMA board resolutions authorizing execution and submission of the following application for Loop 375 at FM 659, the Zaragoza Direct Connectors Project. Item A pass-through financing application to the Texas Department of Transportation in the amount of $7 million. And B, a state infrastructure bank loan application to the Texas Department of Transportation in the amount of $20 million. Questions?
Mr. Tejas,
Yes.
these are substantially the same, 6 and 7, correct?
Yes, essentially they're the same. The applications obviously are different. Their content is different because they relate to different projects, and in fact the amounts are different. And to that point, actually, when we're discussing the Zaragoza Direct Connector projects, we're talking about a $32 million project, and in that project we're looking again for $20 million in pass-through funding, which I'm sorry, $20 million in state infrastructure bank loans to be repaid by Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 2, and $5 million in Category 2 direct funded dollars, with the remaining $7 million coming from the pass-through program of TxDOT. So what you'll see in 7A and B is the pass-through application for 7 and the SIB application for $20 million. So it's, pardon?
If the numbers are going to move, it would be that 20 million? Is that what would move?
Yes,
Sounds more reasonable that it would be right there.
that's right. The 20 million on both
Yeah.
6B and 7B would change. Now, remember, too, this is, in terms of timeline, we should discuss that very briefly. In order to get to the April letting, all of these agreements, the State Infrastructure Bank loan agreements, the pass-through agreements, any project development agreements, and any other related agreements that relate to the project have to be put in place. So what you're seeing then is on the January Transportation Commission agenda for next Thursday, and I'll be there for that, which you'll see are the
January, what date?
27th, I believe, next Thursday. What you'll see is the pass-through, the two pass-through applications. Those have been placed on the agenda. I provided drafts of the applications to TxDOT. They are reviewing those currently. The point with, from the timing perspective, the pass-through applications and the SIB applications require 2 readings at the Transportation Commission. So what you'll see is the pass-throughs next Thursday for the January Transportation Commission meeting, skip a month, and then they'll be back for second and final reading, which authorizes the execution of the pass-through agreements in March. So January and March. The State Infrastructure Bank application process requires that the applications have been received by TxDOT 30 days in advance of any Transportation Commission action. So that one, the first reading is getting pushed to February. So in February, at the Transportation Commission, they will receive the first reading of the 2 State Infrastructure Bank loans, and likely in the very next month, in March, have the second and final readings to approve the State Infrastructure Bank loans at that time. So both pass-throughs and both SIB applications, we are hopeful all 4 will get approved in March, just in time for the April letting.
A little different than normal, and they're usually not so compressed, but in order to meet the April letting, which we are all working diligently to do, we're going to make sure that we have everything done on our part to make sure that that can happen.
Absolutely. And I think we've done everything that we can.
So, subject to any questions, is there an item to approve, item 7?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 7 is approved. Item 8, discussion and action on the Executive Director's report. First, the item A, the CRRMA's 2010 strategic plan, which all of us should now have a copy of.
Yes, sir. We've provided, I think, at least 5 of them to each of you. We've printed a number of them, so we have more available. In fact, we've put some extra copies there on the podium if the public is interested in receiving those. We've also posted it online with the rest of our publications. As you know, we have all of our annual reports and all of our strategic plans online on our website at crrma.org. So those are available to the public here. And of course, if you all need any for additional distribution to your colleagues, let me know and I can provide those to you.
Dr. Payan, I appreciate the planning committee, Jim and Rosario working to complete this. I think it is a great reflection of kind of where we're going, what the future holds. Great document. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Jim and Rosario. She's not here, but
Raymond, thank you also for all your assistance.
Absolutely. And to that point, actually, the Planning Committee has scheduled 2 meetings coming up, one for January 31st and the next one for February 7th. And the intent of those 2 meetings is to actually process and develop the final version of the next annual report, which will then be published in mid-March.
And we're required to have that out
By March 31st. And our schedule will have it out by about March 15th, if not sooner.
also posted on the website as well.
Of course, everything that we do is posted there.
Any other questions on the strategic plan? Item B, the 2011 Texas Transportation Forum that was just held at the beginning of the year. Both Mr. Tejas and our Vice Chair, Mr. Dami, were there. Mr. Tejas?
Well, it was another excellent conference, I believe. We spent a lot of time meeting with transportation folks throughout the state. Dr. Payan, you went last year, so you know how it works. One thing I did specifically want to mention is that included in your backup and tabbed as 8B is a document that was prepared by Representative Pickett's Transportation Committee from the House. He developed this in the form of a placemat, and this was actually placed at one of the breakfast sessions that we had. In fact, it was Representative Pickett's session where he spoke with the Senate chair, the chair of the Senate Transportation and Homeland Security Committee. They both spoke about the coming year and what they see in the legislature in terms of transportation. I thought this was an excellent document. It really goes to how transportation is financed in the state. And I thought this would be a really useful document to share with you all, and you can share with the public as well. Obviously, Mr. Marcus knows this information through his involvement with the 2030 Committee, but this is just really great, an easy way to digest and pass out this information, so I thought I'd share it with you. It's really good document.
Mr. Tez?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out that the numbers did come from our committee report, our 2030 committee report. However, we're in the process of submitting a revised report to the state, and you will find that this time we've actually talked about sources of revenue and variable levels of congestion in relation to how much the state decides they want to spend on infrastructure maintenance.
That's excellent. That's really timely, obviously, with the session. Actually, I wanted to mention one thing. At next month's board meeting, as you all know, Mr. Marcus is a member of the 2030 Committee. I'm going to ask Mr. Marcus to spend a couple of minutes of next board meeting to explain what the 2030 Committee is and what they're tasked with. And I believe you're looking to release your report in March.
We're releasing it to the working session of the Transportation Commission next Wednesday, the day before you're there.
Okay.
I'm going to actually narrate the report to them. The final report will go out at the March Commission meeting.
Okay. Well, so I'd love to have you come and give a full briefing to this board, obviously, in April. So hopefully we can do that. So in February, we can give you a briefing of what the 2030 Committee is, what Mr. Marcus is doing on that committee, and then the following month we can have the final report from him as well. Another really useful committee to explain how transportation financing works and really what's coming, I think, is what your report is going to look at. So anyhow, this document I thought was really helpful. So if you need copies, I have it electronically. I can share it with you. You can share it with your colleagues, or I'll ask the representative if we can put it on our website because it's such a good document.
For next January, I know it's a long way away, but it seems like the years come faster and faster. I think we may like to have potentially 2 board members. I'd like to go myself, so if there's some interest in another member going next January, let's kind of talk about that towards the end of the year. And I hadn't spoken to Ralph directly, but to Mr. Tejas, Mr. Dami found it extremely helpful and very interesting to work with any of the number, whether it be our financial advisors, whether it be personnel from TxDOT, whether it be our attorney, just very, very insightful. So
I might point out that my involvement on the 2030 Committee evolved from speaking at the Transportation Forum 3 years ago. So if you go to the forum, as you know, Tony, because you were there, you meet people from all over the state, and as you get to know them, you can get more and more involved in the state level in transportation issues, and it's fascinating. It's depressing, but it's fascinating.
Yes.
thank you, David. Item C, a reminder of the election of officers, February board meeting.
That's it. You just did it. So as you know, we're required by our bylaws to have the election of officers. That's the vice chair, the secretary. We've added an alternate secretary, and the treasurer. Those positions will be up at the February meeting, so I'll have that on.
And I have a question on that point. I think the term is a 2-year term that ends formally in February, right?
Yes.
For each of us. So there has to be a reappointment. Is that what the process is going to be? And what's – because I know that it'll be 4 years in February that we've – at least David and I have been on the board, and Ralph, since the beginning. So I guess are we going to get reappointed, or we could potentially be replaced by the city council if they so desire, right?
Well, that's always a possibility. What I've asked the executive assistant to the mayor to begin processing those reappointments, and I'm not going to remember exactly who's up. I know that Mr. Volk, you're up already because you were serving an unexpired term, and I'm not going to remember the other 2 right now, but I'll share that with you all with regard to who's up for reappointment. I've asked them to reappoint. One of the holdups, and as you all will recall, actually let me state it this way. On February 1, anyone who has not been reappointed then falls into holdover status. So you're still a fully functioning member of the board. You're just in that holdover status until you get either reappointed or replaced. So you will all continue to be on the board. But one of the holdups that the city has had is that the appointment process that was created by the city in the original petition for the creation of the RMA was a little bit cumbersome, and it requires the identification of 3 different names for the selection for each position. So at any year, you would have to identify 9 names even for reappointments. So they had asked that we look at a revision to that appointment process. We did that, and we shared that with TxDOT, and got recent confirmation from TxDOT that TxDOT doesn't need to be involved in any revisions to the appointment process from here going forward. So I've sent that on to the city, asked them to make that revision, and all they have to do is submit it to their council via council resolution, make that adjustment to the appointment process, and then they could reappoint in that same resolution, which is what I've asked them to do.
Okay, so and all that within the next week or two?
Probably not. So more likely than not, those folks that are to be reappointed will fall into holdover status.
Okay.
Now, I believe, and we dealt with, and I'll have to look at it, but we dealt with the election of officers with that issue because you are staggered by making the officers' election each year, and it falls in February with the idea that the reappointments would have been made by February 1. Now, with the revision to the appointment process, I think that will happen from here forward.
What if, I'm just anticipating a potential probably unlikely scenario that we have an election for different positions and then that member elected here within the board is not reappointed.
Right.
And all of a sudden we find ourselves having to, but anyway.
And essentially what would happen is at the very next RMA board meeting, we would have another election for that position.
Okay.
Do you know something I don't know, Dr. Pine?
No, not at all. Actually, I'm happy to serve. In fact, I think over 4 years, I've learned quite a lot.
And there's a steep learning curve, so we want to keep you here.
Let me tell you, I'm still learning. Yes.
Right. Any other questions? Mr. Tace, is there any other items or any other business?
No, sir.
Subject to that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is 9:53 on January 20th, and we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.